Hello. I didn't expect anything to happen. It was just a company retreat, 2 nights in the mountains, a glorified team-building getaway the company insisted would strengthen interdepartmental synergy. Whatever that meant. All I knew was that it meant I had to give up a weekend of peace and instead spend 48 hours surrounded by coworkers I barely knew outside of Slack messages and weekly stand-ups. The drive out was long and quiet. I rolled the windows down halfway, letting the cool mountain air cut through the recycled breath of my aging Honda Civic. The GPS led me deeper into pine-dense wilderness until the signal dropped and the road turned to gravel. The retreat cabin wasn't exactly rustic, but it wasn't luxury either, more like someone's well-maintained Airbnb that they charged $5,000 a weekend for. I pulled in just before sunset, the sky already turning that soft golden orange, and parked between an HR manager's Lexus and someone's shiny black Jeep. Music was playing faintly from the porch speakers, and I could hear laughter spilling out through the open windows. That kind of forced, trying too hard laughter you hear at networking events. I sighed, grabbed my backpack, and headed for the front steps. That's when I saw him. Jordan. He was leaned up against the wooden deck railing, a bottle of beer in one hand, sunglasses pushed up into his curls, smiling lazily at something one of the product leads was saying. I froze for just half a second, not enough for anyone to notice. But my chest tightened. It's not that I hadn't seen Jordan before. We worked in the same office. Different teams, different roles, but close enough to share a break room and nod at each other in the halls. And over the last 6 months, those nods had turned into occasional comments, shared eye rolls during meetings, small talk in the kitchen, and glances. Too many of those. He had that kind of presence that made you feel off balance. Tall, easy smile, that stupid silver ring on his index finger he was always fidgeting with. The kind of guy who always smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. The kind of guy who knew exactly how to take up space. He looked up and spotted me immediately. His face broke into that lopsided grin I hated for how much I liked it. Well, he called out, voice raised over the music. Didn't think you were coming. Yeah, I said, awkwardly adjusting the strap on my backpack. Last-minute decision. Glad you made it, he said, pushing off the railing. Come on, I'll show you where the rooms are. Inside, the cabin had the usual layout. Open kitchen, big stone fireplace, oversized couches. Most of the team was already a few drinks in, clustered around the kitchen island, grazing on catered charcuterie, and laughing like it was the best night of their lives. I trailed Jordan down a hallway, shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. They didn't stick you with bunk beds in the attic or something? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He chuckled. Nah, they told us to pair up. Most people already claimed their spots before you got here, so... So? I raised an eyebrow. He pushed open a door near the end of the hallway. You're with me. Hope that's cool. I stepped inside, half expecting some cramped corner room. Instead, it was easily the nicest one I'd seen so far. A king bed, 2 nightstands, a window looking out into the forest. There's one bed, I said, deadpan. Yeah, he said, tossing his duffel on one side. But it's big. You afraid I'm gonna spoon you in the middle of the night or something? My stomach fluttered in a way I chose to ignore. No, I said, casually as I could. Just wondering if I should sleep diagonally for dominance. He laughed at that. You do that, I'll kick you off by midnight. There was an ease in the way he talked, moved, existed in the space like he wasn't sharing it with someone he barely knew. Like this wasn't awkward at all. Later that night, after hours of forced socializing, cheap wine, and campfire get-to-know-you games, I returned to the room feeling wrung out. The cabin was quiet now, the only sounds the occasional creak of floorboards and a few muffled voices from the living room. Jordan was already in the room, shirt off, gray sweatpants slung low on his hips. He was brushing his teeth, humming to himself. I paused in the doorway, suddenly unsure of myself. You mind if I use the bathroom real quick? He glanced at me through the mirror and gave a toothpaste smile. All yours. By the time I came out, Jordan had turned off the main lights and was lying in bed, one arm behind his head, scrolling his phone. The soft glow of the bedside lamp lit half his face, the other half cast in shadows. I hesitated again. You gonna sleep standing up? He asked, not looking up. I climbed into the other side of the bed, fully clothed in a hoodie and sweatpants, keeping to my half like there was an invisible wall between us. The mattress dipped slightly under our weight, and I stared at the ceiling, every part of me tense. Night, he said quietly. Night. There was a long silence. I turned onto my side, facing away from him, and listened to the slow rhythm of his breathing. I couldn't fall asleep, not with the heat of his body beside me, not with his presence looming large in the space between us, not when I kept wondering what would happen if he turned toward me, if he reached out, if he'd been waiting for something to change too. I woke up groggy, disoriented, the morning light bleeding through the edges of the curtains. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I felt it. The weight of the mattress shifted just slightly, the faint warmth of a body behind me, close enough that I could feel the difference in temperature but not quite touching. Jordan. My heart did a weird flip as the memories from last night came rushing back. The shared bed, his bare chest, that stupid smirk when he said I could sleep diagonally, the silence that hung in the air after we both said goodnight, too thick to ignore. I stayed perfectly still, listening. His breathing was slow, steady. Asleep, maybe. Or pretending to be. The space between us, barely a few inches, felt massive and microscopic at the same time. I could shift backward and our bodies would touch. Just barely. But I didn't. Instead, I waited, too aware of everything. The sound of the wind brushing through the trees outside, a bird somewhere near the window, the distant sound of someone making coffee in the kitchen. Eventually, he moved. A slow stretch, the mattress dipping slightly as he shifted onto his back. I could feel his hand brush the edge of the blanket between us. Then his voice, low and still thick with sleep. You awake? Yeah, a beat. Then, sleep okay? Sure, I lied. He let out a small chuckle. You were stiff as a board. I thought you were gonna roll off the edge at one point. I didn't want to crowd you. You wouldn't have. I turned my head just slightly, enough to see the outline of his face on the pillow. His eyes were open, watching me. The look in them was unreadable, not playful, not teasing, just present. There was a question hovering in the space between us, unspoken and heavy, but neither of us said anything. After a moment, he sat up and swung his legs over the edge of the bed, ruffling his curls with one hand. Come on, he said. They're making breakfast. And you know if we wait too long, all the good stuff will be gone. I nodded, pulling the covers off and sitting up, avoiding his gaze even though I could feel it linger. Downstairs, the smell of bacon and coffee did its best to drag me into the land of the living. The rest of the team was already scattered around the kitchen island and dining table, eating off paper plates, laughing about something someone had said the night before. Jordan melted into the crowd like he always did, shoulder bumps, inside jokes, easy grins. And I stood there, leaning against the counter with a plastic cup of orange juice, watching him, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. Hey, he said, sidling up beside me a few minutes later, a pancake folded in half on his plate. Want to go for a walk later? There's a trail behind the cabin, supposed to lead to a lake. I blinked. Just us? He shrugged like it was no big deal. Yeah, unless you're planning to play Settlers of Catan with the accountants. I laughed despite myself. No thanks. A walk sounds good. So that afternoon, when the sun was high and most of the group was halfway to a collective nap, we slipped out the back, past the fire pit, and down a narrow dirt path that wound into the woods. The trees closed in around us, tall and quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're somewhere private. We walked side by side for a while without speaking. It wasn't awkward, just quiet, easy. You ever do these retreats before? He asked finally. Nope, first one. You hate it? I wouldn't say I hate it, I said, hopping over a fallen branch. Just not big on forced fun. Jordan nodded. Yeah, I figured. You've got that vibe. What vibe? He glanced at me. Like you're watching everything from outside the fishbowl. I frowned. Thanks? He grinned. I meant it as a compliment. You're quiet, but you don't miss anything. Neither do you, I said before I could stop myself. That made him pause. We stopped at a small clearing, the trees parting just enough to let the sunlight spill through. There was a fallen log nearby, half covered in moss, and Jordan sat down, brushing off a patch of bark. I'm not good at this kind of stuff, he said out of nowhere. I stayed standing, hands shoved in my hoodie pocket. At walking in the woods? At talking to people when I want to say something real. The air thickened again. My pulse picked up. What do you want to say? I asked. He looked up at me, the sun catching the edges of his hair, softening the sharp lines of his face. Last night, I didn't mind sharing the bed. In fact, I wanted to. I stared at him, throat dry. I've been trying to figure you out for a while, he went on, but you're hard to read. That's the point. I know, he said with a small laugh, but you should know I'm not messing around. If I ever come close, it's not by accident. We sat in the weight of that for a while. The wind rustled the leaves above us. Somewhere in the distance, a bird let out a long, echoing call. And for once, I didn't have anything sarcastic to say. We didn't say much on the walk back. Jordan didn't try to press the conversation, and I didn't know what else to say. My head was buzzing, with questions, with a tension I didn't know how to name. He kept a few paces ahead, hands in his pockets, walking like someone who had made peace with something. I walked like someone still caught in the undertow. Back at the cabin, the energy had shifted. People were lounging around the fire pit now, sipping drinks, playing card games on collapsible tables. A few of our coworkers waved us over. Jordan nodded but kept walking toward the house. I followed, silent. Inside, he turned to me once we hit the hallway. I'm gonna crash for a bit, he said. You good? Yeah, I said, leaning against the wall, watching him reach for the doorknob to our room. I hesitated. Hey, Jordan. He turned, waited. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What was I gonna say? That I'd felt that weird shift last night too? That I hadn't slept a minute because I was hyper aware of every inch of his body beside mine? Instead, I said, thanks for earlier. He smiled, that soft one again, not the cocky one I'd gotten used to. Anytime. The door closed behind him. I should have walked away, should have gone outside, grabbed a beer, rejoined the group. But I didn't. I stayed leaning against the wall like some dumb extra in a romance movie, wondering when I'd lost the thread of what this weekend was supposed to be. Eventually, I did go outside. I sat around the fire for a while, nodded through a conversation about someone's wedding plans, laughed in all the right places. But my brain was somewhere else, in that room, in that moment. It was dark by the time I slipped back into the cabin. Most people were still outside, caught in the glow of firelight and half-drunk laughter. Our room was dark except for the soft glow of a nightlight someone had plugged in, probably for ambiance more than practicality. Jordan was already in bed, lying on his back, one arm tucked behind his head, staring at the ceiling. I stood in the doorway for a second longer than I needed to. He glanced over. Hey! Hey! I shut the door behind me quietly and walked over to my side of the bed. I sat down, peeled off my hoodie, and pulled the blanket back. I didn't look at him. You sleep earlier? I asked, keeping my voice low. He let out a small huff. Tried. I nodded, got under the blanket, and lay on my back too, staring at the same ceiling. The silence stretched. Then I felt it. A shift. Jordan turned, slow and deliberate, onto his side. His voice came, barely audible in the dark. Can I ask you something? I swallowed. Sure. Have you ever thought about it? About me? The words hit with the kind of force you don't see coming until they're already inside you. I turned my head slightly toward him. Why would you ask that? Because I have. And I don't want to be the only one sitting here wondering. His voice was calm, but I could hear the crack beneath it. the way he was holding something steady that had been shaking for a while. I didn't answer right away. My chest felt tight, like there was too much air and not enough space. Finally, I said, "Yeah, I've thought about it." He let out a breath. I couldn't tell if it was relief or tension. Maybe both. A moment passed, then another. I thought that would be it. Then his hand found mine under the blanket, barely touching. Just his fingers brushing mine. A test. I didn't move, didn't pull away. I turned onto my side too. Facing him now, the two of us inches apart, our hands now fully entwined under the sheets. In the soft dark, I could see his eyes. I could feel the heat radiating between us. My pulse was loud in my ears. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "I don't know if it's a bad idea." "It probably is," he said, "but I still want it." And just like that, the space between us disappeared. His lips touched mine, slow, careful, like he wasn't sure I'd let it happen. But I did. I didn't pull away. I kissed him back. Not hard, not fast, just real. Like something that had been building between us for far too long had finally snapped loose. And when we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. No more words. Just breathing. Just him. Just me. Whatever came next, we'd deal with it later. When I woke up, it took a moment to remember where I was. The air smelled faintly of pine and old wood, the morning light slanting through the curtain in narrow, golden beams. The sheets were tangled around my legs, one arm half asleep beneath my body, and then I felt it, warmth, not just from the sunlight, from him. Jordan was still asleep beside me, not touching me, but close enough that his hand rested palm up between us on the mattress, like he'd fallen asleep mid-reach. His face was turned toward me, his lashes casting soft shadows across his cheek. His chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. For a second, I didn't move. I just stared. It wasn't a dream. We had kissed. We had crossed that invisible line. I didn't know what to do with that. It had felt easy in the dark, natural even. The quiet, the warmth, the way he'd looked at me like I wasn't just another face in the office, like he'd seen something more. Now it was daylight. Real. No blanket of silence to hide behind. No half-light to blur the details. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling, heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. What was I supposed to say when he woke up? Joke it off? Pretend it didn't happen? Ask what it meant? The last thing I wanted was to turn this into something weird. I liked Jordan. I respected him. And last night had been, God, it had been good. Not dramatic or reckless, just soft, careful, honest. But I didn't know where we stood now. Jordan stirred, and I froze. He shifted slightly, brow furrowing, then opened his eyes slowly. When his gaze met mine, he blinked a few times like he was recalibrating. Then he smiled. Morning. That smile. Casual, familiar, not awkward at all. I managed a quiet, "Hey." He stretched, yawned, then looked at me like we were picking up a conversation right where we'd left off. "You always wake up this tense, or is it just me?" I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "You talk like this happens every day," he shrugged. "It doesn't, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna be weird about it." "You're not? Do you want me to be?" "No," I admitted. "I don't." Jordan sat up, rubbing the back of his neck. His hair was a mess. Somehow it made him look younger, softer. "I meant what I said," he added after a second. "I don't know what this is either, but I'm not regretting anything." Neither am I. That came out faster than I expected. He looked over at me. Good. Another moment of silence, but this time it wasn't heavy. Just full of the kind of quiet you get when two people are still figuring something out together. "I should probably shower before everyone realizes we ghosted last night," he said, pushing off the blanket. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." We didn't talk about whether we'd tell anyone. We didn't define anything. We just got up, careful not to step on each other's bags, moving around the room like we'd done this before. And maybe we would again. Whatever it was. We weren't pretending it didn't happen. That was enough for now. If anyone noticed that we weren't acting exactly normal, they didn't say anything. But I noticed. Every second. Jordan was casual. Too casual, maybe. Leaning on counters during breakfast like he hadn't kissed me last night, laughing along with people's dumb jokes. Tossing a ball around with the others outside while I hovered near the coffee pot like it held the answers to my spinning thoughts. But every now and then, I'd catch him looking. Not just glancing, looking. Like last night was still playing out in his head too. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. The morning moved fast. Breakfast, cleanup, someone organizing a hike none of us really wanted to go on. I found excuses to stay behind. Jordan said he had to help one of the interns figure out how to use the espresso machine. Whatever. It worked. Later, I was sitting on the porch steps, sipping my second coffee, trying to read a book I'd brought but couldn't focus on. The air was cool, fresh, pine-scented. My phone buzzed. A text. "Jordan, you hiding from me or from the team bonding?" I stared at it for a second, then typed back. "Me. Both. Jordan, fair. Jordan, come inside for a sec?" I looked up. Through the front window, I saw him leaning against the wall just past the foyer. One hand in his hoodie pocket, head tilted, like he was waiting. I stood, brushed off my jeans, and walked back in. The door creaked. My heart did something stupid. He met me in the hallway, where no one could see us. For a second, we just stood there. Then he stepped a little closer. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, voice quieter than I meant. "I didn't want you thinking I was blowing you off today." "I didn't think that. I know you overthink things." I tried not to smile. "And you don't?" Jordan looked at me for a long moment. "I do. I'm overthinking everything." "Good. Then we're even." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the leftover scent of soap on his collar. We weren't touching, but it was close. Too close for coworkers. Not close enough for what I wanted. "I keep thinking about last night," he said quietly. "Yeah, me too." His eyes flicked to the hallway, then back to me. "I want more, but I don't want to screw it up. Especially not here, around these people. We don't have to figure it all out now." He nodded slowly. "I know, but I'm not pretending it didn't happen. Neither am I." For a second, his hand brushed mine. Barely. A whisper of contact. But it was enough to make the space between us crackle. Then someone's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Jordan! You helping with the grill or what?" He blinked, pulled back half a step, like the moment had snapped shut. "Coming!" he called, then looked at me again. "Later?" I nodded. "Yeah, later." And just like that, the hallway was empty again. But everything felt different. The retreat ended like all retreats do. Forced smiles, quick hugs, everyone pretending they were more bonded than when they arrived. People loaded up their cars, exchanged fake promises to hang out sometime, and peeled off down the gravel road toward cell service and inboxes and their regular lives. Jordan and I didn't speak much that morning. There was nothing left to say in front of the others, not without it becoming something. He gave me a look before he got into his car, one that felt like a full sentence. I gave him one back, but by the time I got home, everything felt off. I tried to go back to my routine. I made coffee, opened my laptop, answered emails, but my chest felt tight, and I couldn't stop thinking about the way his hand had felt brushing mine, the way his voice dipped low when we were alone. That kiss. There was something unfinished between us, something unspoken, and I hated it. Around 8 that night, my phone buzzed. "Jordan, you home?" I didn't answer right away. 5 minutes later, "Jordan, I'm outside." I walked to the window. There he was, standing next to his car, hands in his jacket pockets, shifting, like he wasn't sure if he should knock. I opened the door before he had the chance. We just looked at each other for a second. Then, quietly, I stepped aside and let him in. Jordan walked in slowly, like the space might collapse under his feet. He looked around, at my living room, the empty coffee mug on the table, the book I'd abandoned. Then he turned to me. I didn't plan what I'm gonna say. Good, I said, voice low, because I'd rather hear the truth. He let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. I'm not great at this, but I'm trying to be. You're doing fine. Jordan stepped closer, hands still in his pockets. That weekend wasn't just a thing for me. It wasn't just some retreat moment. I know. I meant it when I said I want more. I don't care what it looks like. He stopped, shook his head. I want this. You. Us. However the hell it ends up looking. My throat tightened. I stepped toward him, and suddenly all the tension from the last few days broke wide open. I've been trying not to want this, I said, since the moment you walked into the cabin like you owned the place. He gave me a crooked smile. Guilty. I didn't want to be the guy who caught feelings for someone who wasn't sure. I'm sure, he said. Just like that. 2 words, no hesitation. I'm not gonna pretend I've done this before, he added, but I'm not gonna back off either. I looked at him, at the stubborn confidence in his eyes, the quiet nervousness under it, and I felt something settle inside me. I stepped in, closed the space, and kissed him. This time, it wasn't cautious. It was real, certain. He kissed me back with the kind of relief that made my knees weak, his hands sliding to my waist, pulling me closer, like he didn't want any space between us anymore. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed there, forehead to forehead, catching our breath. You want to stay? I asked, already knowing the answer. He smiled against my jaw. Yeah, I really do. We didn't need to talk about what came next. We didn't have to define it that night. What mattered was that it was happening. For real. No more pretending, no more distance, just him. And me. And the beginning of something we didn't need to hide anymore. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.